Okay, today I'm going to do a short video. Hopefully it's shorter because I tend to be a little long-winded. But I'm going to do a shorter video on how to work with a puff sleeve and to keep it puffy. It's, kind of a bummer when you do a puff sleeve and it falls against the arm and it never really poofs up. And adding netting as an afterthought underneath never really works because it's always scratchy. So I'm going to show you how to actually build it in to your sleeve. It's really quick, it's really easy, it's not that hard. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm doing a bodice for a dance program. I like the sleeve on this, it's for a little girl, but the rest of it of course is all different, but I'm going to use this sleeve pattern because I like it and it's the best base for a puff right now, but I am going to add to it, so I'll show you how to do that. So here's my pattern, and what I've done, it's going to be a size 10 for this girl, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut at the size 10 for the underarm sleeve and for the bodice because I'm using the top of the shoulder bodice from this pattern as my sleeve. Now the front and all that has changed, but the armhole is still the same, so I'm still going to use that. So what I've done is I've cut out the size 10 is what I'll cut when I go to put this on my fabric. I decided I needed more puff because this is a really severe puff on this. So what I did, as you can see, I added a piece that I made symmetrical. Remember, you've got to make it symmetrical. So I folded it. Oh, fold please. Fold. And I made sure that where it starts in here at the underarm matched up, and then I drew this so that it would be symmetrical. And then I opened it up, and that is actually what I cut. Now, there's one other way to do this. This cannot be square at the bottom, and this is about as severe as you can go because then pretty soon it'll start making a point, and you can't do that on the bottom of the cuff of the sleeve. So another way to do this is you can actually split your pattern if you're liking the length of the sleeve. Now this is not affecting the underarm at all. The underarm will stay the same. It's only about 3 inches right there. Another way you can do this is you can cut the sleeve and you can actually split this apart and add a strip to the middle of the sleeve. Now when you do that, make sure that you measure on your bodice from your back, that's always the 2 in the back, to the front, to where that marking is. Measure that, and then measure that on the bodice. Now, if you are over about 2.5 to 3 times, this is bigger than the bodice by about 2.5 to 3 times. That's about how much gather you can actually add in there. I wouldn't try to go more than that because you're not going to be able to get that gather tight enough to actually fit the bodice pattern. So if you have some extra room there, you can always add to the middle if you're satisfied with how long the puff is going to be. Now the shorter this is, the more you can actually make it stick out. But this is the way I ended up doing it. So that's where I went with this. Now, that's my pattern. You want to cut one of your over fabric, and then you also want to cut a lining. Now what I did is I picked a real thin, it's got stuff on it. I picked a real thin knit fabric. You can see it's real thin. It's kind of got a light body to it. It's soft. It's not going to be scratchy. So try to stay away from, I know satin, you might think that will work, but satin has that funny bias and you're going to have a real hard time working with it, and it frays really bad and stuff like that. So try to pick something, a little bit better. Cotton is going to be really hard in this application to get it to gather enough. I mean, you might think, oh, it's stiff and it'll help, but on the inside lining, it's a little scratchy and it will not gather up tight enough. So try to pick something with a light body that'll cut well. And this won't unravel on you or add any extra hair that you got to try to deal with, so this is a good choice. So go ahead and cut your lining just like you cut your front. Okay, here's the actual sleeve I'm working on, which I think is going to be awesome. So that's, I just pre-gathered this. I went ahead and gathered the top. Now remember, you always gather in between those marks for the back and the front. Don't ever gather under the arm. To make sure that you leave that flat from your marking for the back or the front to the actual armhole, because no one wants gathers underneath their arm. That would just be annoying. So there's the front, kind of all done. I did go ahead and add the sleeve cuff on there. Now sleeve cuffs are so easy. You don't even have to have a pattern. All it is a rectangular piece of fabric. You can see that there. However the depth that you want, and then add 5/8 obviously on each side for a seam allowance. And then just gather your bottom, and you can see how it changed by adding that kind of curved part to the bottom. I got this really great poof at the very end of the sleeve, which is great. That's what I wanted, so that is going to work. Okay, and then just make this the length of the measurement of the upper arm plus like an inch. Leave a little bit of space there, you know, for wearing ease. You can always take it in, but you can never let it out. Okay, so that's that. Now, how to do the poof. What I did is I took a piece of really stiff net. This is the net that they use in tutus on the underneath, and you can find this net readily available at any fabric store. Just make sure it's not the soft tulle. It's actually called net. Okay, what I did is I figured out how much to put in here, because this will kind of gather up and be inside of the sleeve, to make the sleeve hold its puff. It's about 1.5 times, well, almost 2, I guess, times the length of the actual sleeve. I took that measurement and then I quadrupled it, so you'd have four sets, and then I sewed it. I folded it in half and sewed it along the fold, because you don't want this end into the actual set of the sleeve to the shoulder, because it will poke out, and then it'll be pokey, and your poor girl, whoever's wearing it, is going to be complaining that it's scratchy. So use the fold part, and we're going to actually put the fold part in here, and that's the top of the sleeve. Okay, now this is going to gather up. Now you can use any width that you want. The more width and the more net in there is going to make the sleeve actually poofier, to really help the fabric hold its shape out. So what you're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and gather this and add it to the top of my lining. It's just easier if everything's kind of gathered on its own and then stitched together. It makes the gather not want to get as tight when you try to put all 3 of them together and then gather it. You're just not going to get as tight of a gather.